Judge!
Hello and welcome to the Cinema Judge. To all my regulars out there, welcome back. Now, if you're a first-time listener, let me briefly tell you what the show is about. We love movies. We like to share movies with you. This is like a movie oasis, a place where you could come and get away from all the noise. We're not here to criticize Hollywood, yell at actors, none of that stuff. We leave that to the professionals. Who am I to tell you not to see a movie? That's not our game here. What we do is this. The studios, they send us footage, interviews, on-the-set footage, world premiere footage. We put it together, and we make it to one giant infomercial, and we give you the evidence, me being the judge, you being the jury, so you make up your own mind. It's really simple, because any movie is somebody's favorite movie. In a nutshell, it all comes down to one simple thing. We all want to spend our hard-earned money wisely, because we all want the same thing, an enjoyable movie experience. Now, approaching the bench today, we have an epic sequel to the original Avatar. This is written, directed, produced by the insanely talented James Cameron. And what he's done with this film is nothing short of amazing. The commitment that he has, the dedication, the sacrifice, the hours, it's amazing and it shows. If you're into these kind of movies where it just deals with family and just the struggle and just the commitment to each other, this is your type of movie. But let me just, without me rambling, let me read what this movie is about. Just give you a brief summary before the trailer. Jake Sully lives with his newfound family on the moon Pandora. A family threat returns to finish what was previously started. Jake must work with another army to protect their own home. Here's the trailer for Avatar: The Way of Water.
Why do you come to us?
I just want to keep my family safe.
Treat them as our brothers and sisters. Teach them our ways.
Keep up, Forest boy! If you want to live here, you have to ride. Let's do it.
Just breathe. Breathe.
Outcasts, that's all they see.
I see.
Like you, I'm supposed to fight.
Protect the people.
Let's get it done.
Avatar: The Way of Water.
Now, in this episode, we honestly have some great interviews. And I'm not just saying that to blow my own horn, but they have some great interviews here. James Cameron, the whole cast, talk not just about the story, but about the technical matter. And that's not really the best way to put it, but just the intricacies of making this kind of project, from different kind of shooting styles and everything like that. And I'm going to start off with James Cameron, and he's going to be talking about some of that aspect. Here's James Cameron.
So the actors are in a very pure process. Some of them have likened it to, black box theater, no set, no lighting, no nothing, just the other people. And so their emotional axis in the scene is not distracted by anything. It's just that other actor, They have that with each other. That's all they need. That's all actors need, is an emotional reality to play within, And they love that too, because we're not stopping to lay the dolly track or to get the sun to the right position or get all the extras into place or, get all the hardware back to one and get ready to go again. We just roll. We just, okay, all right, let's do it again. Let's go back to one. Let's do it again. And we just get into a session. Sometimes we'll record for 10, 12 minutes straight, maybe 5, 10 takes, different ideas. Hey, why don't you do this? I'll throw them a line on the fly. It's a very creative sandbox, and the actors really love it. Either that or they're very good actors and lying about it for years on end. It's all little details that add up to a fantasy character. We just want you to believe they really exist. And of course we don't. You go into a movie theater, you're being transported to a fictional fantasy world. But the more you can suspend your disbelief, the more fun it is. I think people want to suspend their disbelief. They don't want to sit there and pick away at it. They just spent whatever it is, 16, 17, 18 bucks to go have an experience. They're leaning in, So there's a kind of almost a contract between the movie and the audience. We're all just going to join hands and skip off to Pandora together, and it's going to be fun.
I could listen to this kind of stuff all day long about the process and all of that. I could just eat it up. Now up next, we're going to hear from two different people. We're going to hear from producer John Landau and also Sigourney Weaver. They're both going to be talking about the process, the writing process, all the kind of stuff that James Cameron does, and just how impressed they are that he could keep this all in his own head and just all the stuff that he makes happen. I'm going to let them talk about it. First producer, then Sigourney Weaver.
I think when Jim writes a script, he writes it without the boundaries of what is possible. He writes it to tell the best narrative story. And then when you pick up and read Titanic, Avatar, or The Way of Water, you go, how are we possibly going to do this? The challenge at first is so daunting that you don't know. But that's what excites me about the process. And that's what excites the crew that we were able to pull together. One of the things that was most rewarding to me coming out of the first Avatar was no matter where I was in the world, people identified themselves with the Na'vi. Whether I was in the Middle East, whether I was in South America, people would come up and say, the Na'vi, they are me. I see myself in that. And I believe in the sequels, people will see the same thing.
I can't imagine any other filmmaker being able to create this from top to bottom with so much detail and bring you so into that world, to create so many stories at once, which is one of the things I admire about Jim. Jim, the storyteller, doing this sort of, coming of age movie that was also a great love story that was also, and perhaps most importantly, the story of these two worlds colliding. I remember having lunch with Jim, and he started to talk about this kind of forest girl who could communicate with the animals and with the plants, who had a special gift of connection with living things, and who had perhaps eventually a strong connection with Ewa. And I loved the idea of this character. And then he said, well, and she's going to be about 14. And I said, oh. And he said, and you and I know how immature you are, so I think you can handle this.
Now, I would love to be a fly on the wall during the conversation. James Cameron, Sigourney Weaver, talking about this character who's 14 years old, and him telling her, because obviously they're good friends, they've worked together for years, but just him telling her, you're immature, we know you can handle it, but just what it took for her to even to embody this kind of role. It took a lot of research and a lot of study. It wasn't her just, I'm just going to take on this role and act like a 14-year-old kid. She actually went in and did a lot of research. Now we're going to hear next from the producer again, and he's going to talk about the character that Sigourney plays and just the whole concept of it. And immediately after that, we're going to have an interview with the incredibly talented Zoe Saldana. But I heard an interview recently, or maybe her name isn't said that way. I believe this is what they said. It might be Saldana. And I don't know which one is true or not. But if you're thinking, who is Zoe? And most of us do, but just in case you don't. She's also in Guardians of the Galaxy. She was in Star Trek. She was in the recent movie Amsterdam, The Atom Project, Maya and the Three, and of course, the Avenger films. The woman is just amazing. What a talent. And she's going to talk about working with Sigourney.
When that character was created, the idea of Sigourney playing the younger version was the perfect fit. And performance capture, I have always said, gives actors the opportunity to play characters that they could not otherwise play. And Kiri's character and Sigourney's performance are the perfect example of that. When you see Kiri up on the screen, she is a 14-year-old young Na'vi girl in search of herself. And it's the performance given by one of the great actresses of our time. But she's playing that girl. And Sigourney went back and studied what she was like when she was younger. We looked at footage that Sigourney gave us in helping to design Kiri and still images, because for us, in a character that we create, it only works to have the performance come through if you're holding on to some of the facial aspects of the actor itself. And Kiri did this, and Sigourney embraced this idea. And to see her playing a 14-year-old kid when she was performing it, it was magic. It's what acting is all about.
She's marvelous. To watch her is like, it's such a work of art. You're watching like a flower unfold, and all of a sudden you get with her on set and you do not recognize that you are talking to a woman that is 5'10", that has walked this earth for decades before you and has made her mark and her presence be known. She is 14, she is vulnerable, she is a child, she is rebellious. She is scared, she is brave, she is Kiri. Everything about Kiri, it's Sigourney.
I think she pretty much sums it up pretty well right there. Now, speaking of Sigourney, this is her coming up next, and she talks about how she had to approach this project.
I have had to work completely differently than I ever have before, because you do have to strip away all of that, Sigourney Weaver, whoever that is. And it's been kind of an amazing experience to go back in time and be with that person every day. And it's been quite an incredible year.
I would love to sit down and talk to her one day. Can you imagine the stories, the information, all the stuff that she could talk about? And I don't know her from anybody, obviously, but in my mind's eye, she seems like somebody you could just sit down, talk with, have a, whether she drinks tea, coffee, whatever it is, just a conversation, and she wouldn't be like all defensive or whatever, and she would have every right to be, because how interview people would get is, always prying for the big deal. But just to have that time where you just sit down and say, just tell me stories about your experiences and just your career. I don't know, just in my mind's eye, she seems like just a down-to-earth type person. Now, up next, we're going to hear from Zoe, and she's going to be talking about the story a little bit, about the family. But I just want to let you know, first off, though, it's from a world premiere, so you're going to hear a lot of noise in the background, so that's what that is. She's going to be talking about her character a little bit in the movie. Then immediately after that, we're going to hear from Sam Worthington, who plays Jake. And he also talks about the story a little bit, and the love story behind this.
In the center of all this turmoil and this beautiful planet lies a family that is trying to stay together, that is trying to raise their children, and in times of war.
I think Jake and Neytiri is the ultimate love story. I think it showed you in the first movie. It didn't matter whether you were, what race you were, what planet you were, what color you were from. Love is love, and I think it forges. The first film and the battle that they undertook forged an unbreakable bond between them. It gets tested, just like any marriage. It gets tried like any kind of relationship under duress. But I think that, Neytiri is Jake's world. That's the world that he found.
We're going to hear next from Zoe, and I love what she says here. I've been trying to put this kind of concept into words before, but I can never come close to it. But I think she really sums it up here when she talks about her character. And then right after that, we're going to hear from Sam Worthington about working with Zoe, that when they first entered up, coming into this world of acting, they were both younger and all that. Now they've experienced more stuff. And then within that interview, he also talks about how his character is different this time around with years past and what he wanted to do with that.
What inspires me about Neytiri is the fact that she is a creature that is living in a world where having to be a feminist doesn't exist. It doesn't process through the minds of any males or any females. I liked that because I was never really playing the empowerment of her. I was just playing her essence. I like to believe that we can finally one day get to be in a world where women do not have to actively empower themselves, but that is just like a birthright that nobody thinks of ever touching, So that's what I love the most about her.
Zoe and me were always just very close. I think we both didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into, and that gave us absolute freedom in the first movie to just bounce off each other and enjoy the ride. I think that she's now have several children. I've had several children. We've seen some side of the industry that we like and don't like. And then when we get back into this world, it's like putting on a great new, an old pair of gloves. It's easy. Jake's a bit more of a warrior this time, so I wanted to give him a bit more of an animalistic feel. He's not necessarily as human as he was 10 years ago. He has adapted. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of put that feral nature into Jake, to distance himself from being the guy in the wheelchair from the first film. I know that what Jim is trying to create is very truthful, very emotional and grounded tales of the tribulations of a family and what it means to be in a family, and putting them in the most dire of situations, in a humongous intergalactic war, filled with exploitation and themes that are almost operatic. And at the heart of it, though, is, as I said, a family unit, a family trying to survive, a family trying to get through the teenage years, a marriage trying to hold itself together.
And that's what this movie's truly about. All the bells and whistles are great and it adds to it. But it really comes down to, it's just a story about family and what they have to do to survive. Now, up next, you guys probably know, you probably read on your own or heard interviews, that so much of this was shot underwater, but really underwater, without, fake stuff happening, whatever. And this stuff I just love it. So first, we're going to hear from James Cameron, and then we're going to talk to the free diving instructor. This guy had to train the cast members to hold their breath for a long time. His name is Kirk Crack. And then we go on to Joe Neytiri, a visual effects guy, talking about the whole process of capturing all this stuff while underwater. Again, this stuff is too cool. I'm just going to let them roll with it. Here they are.
The key to it was to shoot really underwater and really at the surface of the water, so people were swimming properly and they were taking their own weight to get out of the water properly or diving in properly, and it just looks like that. It looks real because the motion was real, and And the emotion was real, because these kids are having to learn how to be underwater. They don't know how to be underwater. They were raised in the forest. And so, their fear factor probably helped. Although everybody was very, very well trained, and we used a very safe and systematic way to allow them to dive. They were all scuba trained, but we didn't use scuba. We just did that so that they got used to being underwater for long periods of time. And we went to Hawaii and we got everybody on scuba, but we were also doing free diving training at the same time.
It needed to look raw. It needed to look like it wasn't a familiar or a comfortable thing with them. But we gave them enough so they could have the skills to draw on. Because that's the thing. I mean, it's one thing to act. It's another thing to act underwater. And then it's another thing to act underwater while you're holding your breath. I mean, most people say, hold your breath, and that's going to be 80% of their concentration. Well, how do you then say, now act and, follow the script? Yeah, so it's kind of interesting going to Sigourney or Kate Winslet and saying, here's what you have to do, right? Here's your scenes. This is what you're going to be asked to do, and you have this ability to do it. And you have the capacity to do 3, 4, upwards of 6-minute breath holds. And in the beginning, it's like, yeah, sure. But then as you go through the educational process and you learn about the body, how it can change and adapt, what is actually possible, and then you start on that small little journey of making gains. Every session we train. And then there's this point where it kind of clicks. It clicks in a number of ways. It clicks in that the physiology starts to respond because of the training effect.
I don't think we could have done this as successfully without the underwater performance capture, because what the actors were doing is just coming through beautifully from the capture. And it's not just the capture itself, excuse me, it was their training and dedication. Like, they would spend a long time underwater each take, and they were natural. They became totally at home with it. And it shows, we get that weightlessness, we get that buoyancy, we get the movement that's struggling against the current or moving with the current, the changes in speed as you're going up or down, as you're breaking the water or diving in. We got a lot of that just from what the actors were doing with the capture. And it adds a realism to it that would have taken years to try to figure out and do by hand, because we would have had to do it by hand otherwise.
I just sometimes think about the concept of when actors have to do stuff like this, hold their breath for so long while they're being shot and have to remember lines, movement, or not, maybe not lines, but you know what I mean? You still got to stay character. And other actors have done it, like Tom Cruise. He's done it for certain movies. I think he held his breath, for 6 or 7 minutes. I forget what it was. But the training these people have to go under, just a mental strength. And every day going to work going, all right, I'm going to have to go down there and hold my breath for a couple minutes. That just blows my mind. But now, speaking of that, we're going to hear from some of the actors talking about this whole experience. First, we're going to hear from Sigourney Weaver, then Zoe, then Sam Worthington, and then the great Kate Winslet. They all talk about this whole underwater capture situation.
I remember when Jim said, oh yeah, you're going to have to hold your breath for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I said, Jim, I can't hold my breath for 30 seconds. And he said, you'll be able to. And I thought, oh, this is just Jim. And yet at the first lesson that Kirk gave us, I held my breath for 1.5 minutes. And I thought, wow, what is this? And it just shows you how little we know about our systems and what they can do.
It was such an amazing thing. I couldn't believe that was the training that we were doing for a movie. It made it more than a movie. It was fun. It was always scary at the end of the day when I would leave the tent because I was driving home. I would go, I can't believe I was 20 feet under. I equalized and I was just holding my breath for over 2 minutes. Like, I can't believe I'm doing that.
That was without a doubt the most difficult thing I've ever done. Been in this industry 20 years, and that's the hardest I've ever had to work. It's scary, it's intense, it the time triples by 3 when you're dealing with water on any movie, but more so on this. And you're actually then having to make it look easy and seamless because the Na'vi and the Metkina learn to breathe underwater.
So the underwater performance capture, first of all, it's a huge amount to think about. So there's not just the physical challenge of holding your breath. There's then the added challenge of acting out a scene underwater where everything is very different. You're having to imagine coral reefs. You're having to picture, other Na'vi, Metkina swimming around you, and often acting with a child who is in actual fact a safety diver who's 35 years old and not a 9-year-old girl. So there's that sort of added element too. Then you have the challenge of your movements are very, very different underwater. So rather than sort of sculling all the time or desperately trying to kick your legs to sort of stay in one place, finding that serenity and that calm, that's another thing. So there's all of that to take care of first. Then you have a wetsuit with motion capture bubbles all over you. Then you have a helmet and an arm with a GoPro sat in the front of it.
Now, here's my question. I can't even imagine the insurance money or whatever they have to say about these kind of movies. Like, when you put an actor in that kind of harm's way, that must be a massive insurance bill or protection bill, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but I think y'all know what I'm kind of saying is that usually when a mega star is involved in any kind of stunts, that could cause a lot of dough. And these people aren't nobodies. Even if they weren't nobodies, danger's danger. But these are mega stars. And if anything should happen to them, that would cost the studio a pretty penny. So they had to do a lot of practice, a lot of focus, because you don't need anything bad to happen to any star or anybody. I know that, but you know what I'm saying. But man, I can't even think about the lawyers and all that kind of jazz. Now, coming up next, we're going to hear from James Cameron, because just in that last interview, we heard from Kate Winslet, and we all know that they worked together on Titanic. So this is him just talking about that whole history and working with her now. And then immediately after that, we're going to hear from Kate Winslet talking about him.
It was such a change from working on Titanic, where she was quite experienced at the time but she had never been on a film of that scale. So it was all a bit bigger than her, a bit overwhelming for her. She did a masterful job, obviously, but on this film, she'd been around the block and done enough movies, and she came in and she spent 2 or 3 days watching how it was all done, and then basically started producing the scenes. But it was fun. I welcomed that, and it was we found it both to be not only a great working relationship in the creation of a very strong, memorable character, and she enjoyed all that, but almost like the freedom to be in a different body, to have a tale and to have a way of walking a movie. And Kate has she's got quite a presence in the film. She's not really like anybody else in the movie. Maybe Neytiri is the closest because they're both very strong kind of alpha characters, and of course they clash for that reason, and that was fun. Watching them meet and clash is one of my favorite parts of the film.
What I love though about Jim deciding to put the actors in the water is that Jim does have, and I don't know any other person in my life like this, Jim does seem to have a sort of an inherent belief that humans can be capable of almost superhuman things sometimes, as he is. I mean, we've all seen it. But he also believes that everyone can push themselves just that little bit further than they ever believed that they were prepared to. And I love seeing him encourage people to go that extra mile and try that new experience that they were afraid of or daunted by. And luckily for me, I wasn't daunted by any of it. But if it weren't for Jim saying, you could do all this water stuff if you want to. I mean, we could always get the stunt people to do it. I'm like, do you know me? Of course I'm going in the water. So it really has been it's just been fantastic, sort of mind-blowing, really.
Now, we all know this kind of film is loaded with visual effects. Because up next, we're going to hear from the supervisor from Lightstorm, and he talks about world building and just getting everything right. Because right after that, we're going to hear from James Cameron, and I love his point of view on this. He talks about the audience, we don't give them brownie points for doing it right. We just notice if you get it wrong. It's just a great interview. Check it out.
It's not far off 20 years working with Jim now. And it's been a really interesting journey. Again, look, one of the reasons I like working with Jim is, he always strives to find the truth in things. And for me, that is everything. When you're trying to stand up visual effects or make people believe in an illusion, you have to begin with truth. So it's the same thing, and Jim, as far as world building is concerned, is all about that. It's like, well, how would that work? You know what I mean? So if you can drill down and understand how it works, well, now you can give it a place in the world. And that's true of, everything.
I don't think the audience gives you brownie points for making what they think of as photography look like photography. It doesn't work that way. You don't get extra. You only get dinged if you don't do it. But you don't get any bonus. It doesn't make it a better movie in their minds. What makes it a better movie is the people, the characters, the creatures, the things they're seeing, the things they're experiencing. But if they can let go of their disbelief, like, did these guys go to this other planet and shoot it, in that handheld documentary style? I feel like I'm really there. It's all working at a subliminal level. It's taking away the disbelief. And if they believe in it and they invest in it, now it's up to the story and the characters to work on the audience's heart and mind.
In his commitment, everybody gets it. It's contagious, it's intoxicating, and we're going to hear Zoe talk about that next.
Jim had a lot more to deal with, and there was a lot more pressure that was on him, that fell on him, and he was also putting on himself. There's 3 times as many characters, more characters. The world is bigger. The stakes are higher. I can't believe all this lives in his head. I can't believe he conceived this. I can't believe he brings this crew of brilliant minds, and we all drink the Kool-Aid, and then we're like, yeah, man, I'll stay up. I'll spend time away from my family. I'll travel everywhere with you, and I'll try to figure this out because Pandora needs to come back to life again.
And I love these kind of interviews, that these people are really concerned about making these characters believable, have a soul to them. And that's what these next guys talk about. We're going to hear from 2 visual effects guys. First, Richard Bainham, and then Joe Neytiri. And they talk about the importance of that, capturing the essence, the reality, not just watching a cartoon or some stick-like figures, because how sometimes you watch movies where man, is that fake? In this kind of film, it's imperative. That's why they have the capturing, the actors underwater, to give it a base of reality, make you feel like you could care for these people. And then we're going to hear from the producer, John Landau, and he talks about what he hopes the audience will experience once they finally get to see this film.
9 or 10 foot blue people on a planet, 7 light years away, you struggle with credibility as far as the emotion of a character. You're really trying to sell the idea that the soul is present. And I think that's compounded by the design, but if you can get your audience to go along for the journey emotionally, then the look of the character, nothing that is irrelevant. It almost doesn't matter, in the sense that so long as your audience are on board, they're on board, and they can go on the journey. That's the key.
Well, the technology, as in any aspect of filmmaking, is the tool that you use to create the art, right? It's the paintbrush. It's like, for us, it's like building your own camera to shoot the scenes that you want. Like, we're kind of at that stage of the technology. So you get all that under your belt to be able to create the experience for the audience. And hopefully it resonates because we're all just big fans, of films in general, but also of this particular film. And we want to create something that we want to sit down and enjoy, and then hopefully everyone else does as well.
What I am hoping audiences will experience when they finally get to see Way of Water in the theaters is something that makes them forget everything else that is going on in the world. That they are transported to another world, a world that they want to spend time in, but a world that they want to spend time with the characters in this story and learn from their journey how they in their own lives can overcome the challenges they face by the examples that our characters give them.
Now, coming up next, from the red carpet, we're going to hear from Kate Winslet and Zoe. They're both going to be talking about a little bit more about their characters.
So what I can tell you about this film and about the character that I play, so I play the character of Renal, and she is the female warrior leader of the Metcaina tribe, and the Metcaina are people who live on and in the water. Their life is with the water and the animals that are there as well. And their community is vast. My character is fiercely protective of her community. So the Sully family run to us for sanctuary, and my character isn't so sure whether she really wants them to move in, so there's some sparks that fly.
I mean, it was a wonderful experience. This was 7 years in the making, you know, and 5 in the shooting, and we're finally here. I know that for the fans it was more like 13 years. Good things are always worth the wait. Jim has been known for taking his time because he has that much respect and that much love for his followers, for his fans. And he knows that what made Avatar 1 special was the fact that there was a true love story. He needed to wait for this story to sort of tell him where it wanted to go. And I'm so happy he did. Stepping back into playing Neytiri is something really special to me. This character is a character that I feel kindred with in so many ways. I learned so much about her. I gave so much of myself to her, so getting to revisit her, to reincarnate her, it just feels like it's a gift that keeps on giving.
You just heard from Zoe, an amazing, talented woman, and everything she touches is just magic. Everything that she's in, I always can't wait to watch because she brings something to every character, and she's just amazing. Now, coming up next, we're going to hear from Sigourney Weaver. And if you remember, she was in the first Avatar, and then stuff happened to her character, and she's back this time around, and we talked about earlier, but this time her character is wildly different. And I'm not here to ruin stuff for you. And already during the show, they've given away, some of the things, but I'm not here to inject and, do anything like that. We're going to hear from her, and we're going to hear from her from several premieres, Tokyo, Europe, and the United States. And you come here to listen to their interviews. So I'm just going to let these ride, because that's what you're here for, to hear from the stars. Here's Sigourney Weaver.
The new character I play is Kiri, who's 14. She has a connection with Grace Augustine, who I played in the first one. She feels more at home in the forest with creatures and plants than she does with people. And she's a special girl. She's very lovable. I think Jim Cameron writing such a wonderful part, but also we learned how to free dive, and there's a lot of amazing diving, and I got to hold my breath up to 6.5 minutes. It's about a family, very much reflective of Jim's personal family. And family is such a universal theme, so relatable, and it just, you become part of this family. And you go with us through all these different challenges and different high points, and it's an incredibly immersive experience. I would say don't even buy popcorn. Well, my husband saw it last week. He's coming again tonight, because you have to see it more than once. I mean, it's just so much to take in. And our daughter is going to see it in LA. Luckily, I had a long time to prepare to play a 14-year-old. I remember my 14-year-old, and I also observed a lot of, kids from maybe 10 to 15, and such a special age. I was very honored to play Kiri because she's an unusual girl, someone who loves nature sometimes more than people. And it's been great fun for me to see the finished product because her joy in the world is so real. Well, it's so exciting to be here tonight, just to know we're going to share it with so many people who are so excited. And we've been so excited now for about 10 years, having read the scripts, and it was a wonderful project to be part of. And Jim is a great director. Our ensemble is just wonderful. And so now that we get to share with everybody, it's just the best. It's exciting to share something that's this global in concept and so meaningful. It's an emotional story and also just a completely immersive experience.
Now, is there anything that she's been in that you don't like? I think every one of us could admit, if Sigourney Weaver's in a movie, you're going to like it. So much talent, brings so much an energy and just believability to whatever she does. Now, from another world premiere, we're going to hear from the incredible, the brilliant, dare I say genius? You find the words, whatever you think it is, but James Cameron is up next, talking from the world premiere. Here he is.
It was longer, it was more complicated, more characters, right? But we had a lot of new tools that made it easier in some regards. We had to figure out how to do water. You know, movie's called The Way of Water, but we had to figure out the way of water for performance capture and for CG, make it absolutely seamless, which I think we accomplished, and that's part of the dreamlike wonder of the movie, which is part of our stock in trade, you know, doing Avatar, if you will. It was a joyful experience with the cast. They're just so damn good. That feeds me as a director creatively. You know, I could go on for hours about how great the actors are in this film, but you got to kind of see it to see what I'm talking about. Look, 3D is great. The film was authored in 3D as opposed to it just being slapped on later. It sucks you in, it draws you into the movie. Some people don't like 3D. That's fine. Go see it in 2D. We're very proud of our 2D presentation, CinemaScope compositions and so on. I mean, it's a gorgeous film regardless. But if you like 3D, you're going to love this movie.
I mean, come on. The guy's a beast. Everything he touches. I mean, it's what goes on in his head, how he makes stuff happen, the commitment to entertaining us. I'm happy to be alive during these times because with these kind of directors, writers, producers, they don't settle for nothing less than perfect in their mind. They will go to whatever length it is, and it shows in their product. Wouldn't it be just so cool to sit and watch a day in the life of James Cameron? Can you imagine the meetings, how many projects maybe he has in the pipeline that we don't even know about, whether it's through producing or just more of the avatars? Now picture this, and I've said stuff like this in the past, but picture this, if you will, if they did a whole show on James Cameron, a miniseries, whatever it is, where they just follow him for a year and just see what he does, and all the stuff he has his hands in, and what it takes to make a great product. It must be just insane to be part of his circle. And just to be part of that would be, I must admit though, it must be so stressful. Imagine being in his orbit. He expects greatness. That's a lot of pressure. And it must be just so rewarding too, to get the product done. And to be able to say to him, oh, you wanted this done? Well, I got it done for you. Is this what you wanted? That's what you guys should do out there. Somebody talk to him, or some producer, anybody, and talk about a master class. Watching Cameron work, dealing with his vision, he compromises, but it has no compromise feel to him, where he's like, this is my vision, and I want it done. I mean, he's had to work to get here. Obviously, look at his long career. But it's the product that pays off. When you have the proof is in the pudding. When you have the projects and the output and the quality, how can you argue with the man? And that's what would be so cool to see. The year in the life of James Cameron, and okay, he wakes up in the day. What's he do? Who's he talking to? All the technology that's in his realm. Anyway, that would be amazing. Come on, people, make it happen. Now, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, any way to improve the show, let me know. cinemajudge@hotmail.com. I would love to hear your feedback, because I can't grow if I don't know. Instagram, TikTok, you name it, Flipboard, you name the platform, I'm on most of them. Drop a line, let me know what I can do, because I want to make it more enjoyable for you. That's what this is all about. I like talking movies, I like sharing movies, and I hope you do too. What can I do to make it better? Or whatever you think. Creative criticism is always welcome. But now, if you're a regular listener, you know what time it is. It's shout-out time. This is where I give a shout-out to as many people as I can who listened to the last episode. And if you say to yourself, hey, I listened to a lot of the back catalog, you didn't mention me. Well, this time when I do this part of the show, it's only shout-outs for last episode. But don't think for one iota of a second that I don't see that. When I see somebody listen to a show, whether it be from 3 weeks ago or 2 years ago, I still do a happy dance. Don't think I don't. So if you do listen to old episodes, I'm ecstatic. Like I always say to you guys, wherever, whenever, or whatever you're doing, this is for you. So for all you around the world, I hope my voice finds you well. All my listeners from the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, and France, Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, Indianapolis, Indiana, Cape May Court House, New Jersey, Littleton, Colorado, Portsmouth, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, Farmington, Minnesota, Holyoke, Mass, Vargas, Minnesota, and Frankfurt am Main, Hesse, just to name a few. Every solitary one of you. I really appreciate it. Your loyalty is greatly, I tip my cap to you. Because sometimes I'm sitting down here in the basement just talking to myself. You're thinking, well, whatever, maybe people don't listen. But so many of you stop in every episode, blockbuster or not, and you listen. And that means the world to me. Because I'm going to be incredibly honest with you here. There's so many of you out there, I have no idea who you are. You don't know who I am. There are people in my life I've known majority of my life, and they refuse to listen. But you guys, a lot of you guys, I don't even know. And you take time out of your busy, hectic life to listen to this show. I mean, I just get, like I said, wow, it's incredible. But now, it's the bourbon shout-out. This week, I have a couple for you. First, Deja from Holiday Gas Station. Thanks for letting me talk movies with you. I appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you again. And then Lauren, you and your whole team, unbelievable. You guys bring so much happiness, commitment, and joy every time we had to see you guys. And that's what made you guys stand out. And Lauren, just talking to you about your dogs and the whole dog adventure was just so fun. And that kind of attitude, this brings a whole levity to the whole situation. So to you, Lauren, and everybody that you work with, I am so grateful and indebted to you. And it was a blast chatting with you. And also, I want to personally thank and give my bourbon shout out to Complete Garage Door Solutions. My garage door during this last week completely tanked out on me. When it got all busted up. And it was super cold outside. And it was really hard to get somebody out here. But the guy, Jesse, came over, incredibly nice, knowledgeable, informative. The guy was just top notch. And it was just wonderful to say, this guy knows what he's doing. He walked me through everything. There's no worries at all. So to you, Jesse, from Complete Garage Door Solutions, you, sir, are the man. And I'll be going back to you guys again because I was in a pinch, nowhere to go. My garage door would have been stuck open, and you were there for me. So I truly thank you, Jesse. You're the man. But now it's the music section, guys. As most of you know, this starts off as a TV show here in Bloomington, Minnesota on cable access. And if you want to watch that, you go to either Bloomington, Minnesota's webpage, or you go to bit.ly/CinemaJudge, bit.ly/CinemaJudge, or like I said, go to Bloomington, Minnesota's public television channel. And a lot of these shows are there. This one's currently there, so if you want to watch these interviews, it's there to have you watch anytime you want, 24 hours a day. When I'm making a TV version, I could be in my complete happy place. My two loves in life, movies and music. It's just, I'm in my happy place. So when I was making a TV version, I was throwing down a bunch of tunes. I first started off with, there's this album out there with Jefferson Airplane, Starship, and Starship. It's all that one band. Their names changed, obviously. but there's the greatest hits with pretty much all those decades together into one album. And it's great. If you ever have time to find it, give it a shot. And then I went on to Pat Benatar's greatest hits. Again, dozens of hits. And I remember seeing her over the summertime at like Ribfest or something like that. Still cranking out the tunes, doing a great job. But her greatest hits truly are greatest hits. And then I moved on to Sinead O'Connor. Every once in a while I had that wild hair. And I'm like, I need some Sinead O'Connor. Because her pipes, her voice, her words are sometimes just brings you places. So I threw down her 1987 debut album, Lion in the Cobra. That album, I remember I bought that on tape. And I remember I went to the record store, back when you went to record stores, and I was looking for something else. I don't even remember what I was looking for. But the person who worked there suggested, you know what, if you're looking for this, I strongly suggest this Sinead O'Connor album, The Lion and the Cobra. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on. But they convinced me, and I was just blown away. I remember putting that in my cassette player with my 70 Monte Carlo, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. The songs on there are just powerful. And I remember driving to Burger King right after I bought it, and I didn't want to get out of my car because I'm like, no, man, every song, just great. And again, this is 1987. Here I'm driving around in the 70 Monte Carlo, just blaring Sinead O'Connor. But man, give that album a listen. There are some memorable tracks on there. Give that a shot. That is just stock full of memorable tunes. That's Lion in the Cobra by Sinead O'Connor. And then I went on to the really famous album, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. And we all know the songs on that one. For example, Nothing Compares to You, written by the late, great Prince. And I still wasn't done with the show yet. So then I just went to my phone, and because I have Amazon Unlimited, because you have Amazon Prime, you get music for free. So why not have the app? And I create a little section there called Ballads. And I have like hundreds of songs on there from various bands. So I went, boop, played that, and I was just soothing away and finishing off the episode with my whole catalog thing of ballads. Well, that is it. My glass awaits. I'm thirsty. So cheers to you and to the movies. So until next time, be well, be good, and I'm gone. I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening to The Cinema Judge.